Hello, everyone. Welcome to Grid Live Wrap Up, a special Monday edition, recapping all the races from Memorial Day weekend, including MotoGP, Monaco Grand Prix, Indianapolis 500, and Coca-Cola 600. Joe Samniego here, along with Ben Schneider, Adam Lemery, Joshua Birch, and Kobe Lambeth from the podium finish. A big thank you and shout out to our Patreon subscribers calling the show, Mark and Robin, for keeping us on the air each and every week. You too can invest in the Grid Network through Patreon or buy me a coffee, a one-time contribution rather than a monthly subscription. But definitely any amount helps us stay on the air. And before we get started, we also want to acknowledge we are on the air because it is a holiday here in the United States. Many folks are not working today. It is Memorial Day. It's a day for everyone to have time off and remember the servicemen and women who lost their lives in combat. It's a sad reminder of the cost of war, and many, of course, are thinking of the current Ukraine-Russian conflict going on and the innocent civilians in harm's way, a reason why war should be avoided at all costs. All the races in the United States traditionally recognize this weekend with pre-race ceremonies, NASCAR, a 3-second pause during the race as well. One race rich in tradition, the Indianapolis 500, a full crowd with attendance, no restriction for the attendance this year for the first time in 2 years. And all those fans, they were treated to a really great race and an intense end in battle.
Yeah, Joe, the 106 Indianapolis 500 saw Chip Ganassi Racing take the win like many predicted, but probably not the driver many thought. But Josh was the only person here in pick a winner to correctly guess Marcus Ericsson. Alex Palou's race went away when the caution came out and the pits were closed, forcing him to make an emergency pit stop and had to restart at the very back of the field as a penalty. Scott Dixon threw away the entire race when he almost spun coming onto pit road and accelerated. He got busted for speed and had to do a drive-through penalty, a heartbreaking defeat after such a dominant performance. But he did pass Al Unser Sr. as the all-time lap leader in the Crown Jewel event. Marcus Ericsson gave Chip Ganassi Racing its first Indy 500 win in a decade. He's the fourth Ganassi driver to win, joining Dixon, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Dario Franchitti, who was the last Ganassi driver to win in 2012, so 10 years ago. Ericsson survived a late race red flag caused by his teammate Jimmy Johnson crashing in turn 2, setting up a 2-lap shootout. He held a paddle award and snaked it down the straight, trying to break the drive. This is Ericsson's third career IndyCar win, but it's his first win on an oval track. And here's the first question. Should more people start respecting Marcus Ericsson now as a driver instead of remembering him for failing to deliver in Formula One, or the Ericsson hit us meme?
Well, it was kind of difficult for him to deliver in Formula One, considering he wasn't with a Mercedes, Ferrari, or Red Bull team. It's always difficult to make any sort of noise beyond just the midfield when you're in one of those cars. And also, the meme is amusing, and I guess it was kind of ironic. It was sad to see Grosjean crash out in the race as well. It's kind of ironic that Ericsson gets the win there, I guess, for the people that have the meme in their mind. But anybody who's still not sure about Marcus Ericsson's talent or whether or not he belongs in the top series, I think all those doubters have certainly been silenced. Kobe, like you were mentioning, I think a lot of us had Chip Ganassi Racing winning this race between all of their 5 drivers. You thought the winner might be in that picture at some point in that picture, but I don't know how many people, aside from Josh, obviously, had Marcus Ericsson being the one. I think a lot of people were going with Scott Dixon to finally get his second, Alex Palou to make up for the runner-up finish last year, and it really looked like it was going to be between the two of them until Palou got caught up in that caution period that came at the wrong place at the wrong time for him. And obviously Scott Dixon with an error that, unfortunately, you can't chalk that up to bad luck. That's on the driver, having to, locking up the brakes coming into the pits. That's just, Indianapolis obviously chooses the winner, and it looked like Scott Dixon was almost home free, but even somebody of his caliber and his prestige in the IndyCar series made a mistake like that. So that was unfortunate. But even with that, Ganassi still is able to pick up the win with Marcus Ericsson, and everybody should be looking at him as a talented race car driver. Now, obviously, he has wins in the IndyCar series before yesterday, and it looks like right now, obviously, there's double points, so it might be inflated a little bit immediately following. But there's no reason to doubt that he might be a legitimate championship contender as well if he can keep this pace going throughout the rest of the season. So absolutely, to answer the question, yes, Marcus Ericsson should be respected as a great driver rather than just a meme at this point in his career?
I don't know why I'm getting so many people messaging me as well, both who listened on the USON broadcast and on the YouTube broadcast. I made that prediction after qualifying day 2 when he was inside the Fast 6 as well. I said Marcus Ericsson is going to win the race. And I made that prediction not out of wanting to be different or not wanting to be saying the usual suspects as well, but this was my 7th Indy 500 commentating. But this is actually the first time I've had all of the free time to sit down, watch and commentate on every single practice session that happened. And there was a lot of them, over 6 hours. And over that time as well, there was 2 drivers that stood out to me. Number 1, Takuma Sato. He was really committed, really strong early on. It was a disappointing race for him. And the second of those drivers was Marcus Ericsson. He was consistent in his runs. Every time there was a pack out there racing, he was right in the middle of it. He was slipstreaming. He was going high side, low side, understanding the car as well, and understanding where to go on the racetrack, exactly how far to push, when not to push. When the track was silent, he was out there running and running and running as well on solo laps. He seemed to have the best setup as well. Everyone was going, oh, Scott Dixon, he'll win from pole. And that looked to be the early prediction as well. We had the top 3 runners. What was it? Alex Palou with Venus VK and Scott Dixon. All 3 of them ran into problems in the race. Dixon and Palou got problems in the pit lane. And of course, VK crashed out. But who was always consistent and up there in that top 10? Erickson throughout the entire race as well. So I stand by that. I'm very proud actually of what you said, Kevin, that nobody got Erickson right and pick a winner by me. So that is a fact. Honestly, I was cheering at that point as well. Me and Megan were saying in the commentary as well, Megan had picked the 2 McLarens to get up there. She picked O'Ward and had Rosenquist as a backup, and I was staying strong. And when Marcus Ericsson took the lead, I was screaming, and Megan was going, no, O'Ward can still do this. Then the red flag came out, and I literally sunk to the floor in the commentary box and went, no, this can't happen. And those 2 laps, it was just like Baku last year for Formula One. Fantastic restart. Ericsson held his nerve. He was moving left and right to break the toe. He was just the right amount of speed through the corners, defending from O'Ward. So yeah, definitely Marcus Ericsson needs to be looked at as a top tier driver now as well. He's found his happy place. He's found his home in motorsport. It's here at the Brickyard as well. And it's here at Chip Ganassi Racing. Fantastic race as well and fantastic driver. And a Husky chocolate milk car got the milk in the 500. So me and Megan both downed a pint of milk yesterday. So cheers, Marcus. You got the pick a winner.
Yes, and I consider Marcus Ericsson as a driver who's quiet, but he's fast. And some people think that he's like the forgotten driver at Chip Ganassi Racing because we always talk about Scott Dixon, who's Scott Dixon, who's one of the best to ever do this in IndyCar. And then we also talk about last year's champion Alex Palou, and then you throw in Jimmy Johnson, and everyone's following his storyline, and then there's just Marcus Ericsson, and a lot of people don't really talk about him as much. But after Indy 500 being brought up to point, with the Indy 500 being double points, it's kind of inflated right now. And Erickson sitting at the top of the standings, and he very well could be a legitimate championship contender during the second half of the 2022 NTT IndyCar Series season. A lot of people probably don't even talk about him being a potential championship contender, but based on what we've seen from Erickson so far this season, he's been quiet but fast and getting the job done in the Indy 500. I think we need to take him seriously as a potential championship contender as we get deeper in this year's IndyCar season. I just want to say it's been really nice watching Marcus Ericsson develop as an IndyCar driver these last few years. I remember his very first Indianapolis 500 when he was driving for the team known as Air McLaren SP today, and Erickson made a big mistake on pit lane. It was a rookie mistake. He got in too hot and ended up crashing on pit road, which ruined his very first Indy 500. Then he switched over to Chip Ganassi Racing. He got off to a rough start there, then really started developing into his own. I think Erickson has really developed into a quite an IndyCar driver. And based on some of the comments I was seeing on Twitter, it seems like a lot of Formula One fans don't have a lot of respect for Marcus Ericsson or IndyCar racing in general. They're choosing to remember him from his stint in Formula One and being brought up to great point. Erickson wasn't in a car that was he didn't drive Formula One cars that were capable of fighting for wins and contending for points on a regular basis. A lot of people like to bring up the fact when he was teammate with Charles Leclerc, how Leclerc constantly outperformed him, but in reality, it's not really fair to judge Marcus Ericsson for his time in Formula One, because a lot of it really depends on what type of car you're in. If you're in a Mercedes, Red Bull, Ferrari, obviously you're going to do well. But if you're with a team that's considered a back marker at the time, then it's going to be very, very hard for a driver like Ericsson to really showcase his skills. And I think Marcus is showing us right now in IndyCar that he's a really, really good race car driver, and it was unfortunate he wasn't able to show that during his time in Formula One. And moving on to the next subject, the team that finished runner-up was Arrow McLaren SP with Pato O'Ward and Felix Rosenquist, who finally finished the race well, got a top 5, a much needed one for him. We talked a bit about him on the pre-race show for the Indy 500, how Felix really, really needed to get a result with Pato O'Ward signing his new deal and Alexander Rossi potentially joining the team next year. And the driver who finished third, the veteran Tony Kanaan. And after the race, Kanaan hinted that this might be his final Indy 500 and IndyCar start because he doesn't have a deal lined up for next year. Pato O'Ward second in points behind Erickson, a great first race after he signed that brand new deal that lasts through 2025. Will Power, the points leader entering this weekend, was not a contender at all day, and his top 5 streak has ended. And none of the Penske drivers showed much. Newgarden, non-factor all day, and Scott McLaughlin crashed out 2 big hits into the wall. Arrow McLaren SP and Ed Carpenter Racing carried the weight for Chevrolet. Starting with you, Josh, were you surprised that Team Penske wasn't a factor at all in this race?
I was actually, considering how well we saw them do at Texas as well, with the 1-2 and the famous cross the line with Newgarden just getting ahead of McLaughlin. So I was very surprised that they were practically nowhere. But I think we were worrying that could be a factor. They had some pace in the practice sessions, but their overall race pace didn't look all that good. And McLaughlin, I was surprised he hit the wall and with such velocity as well to bring him back home. Megan wasn't, because every time Megan does an IndyCar race, something happens to Scott McLaughlin, and it's happened again. So Megan's now going to be barred from IndyCar for a little bit to see. She's not in Belle Isle next weekend, or this weekend coming up, I suppose, now, because it's Monday. So we'll see if McLaughlin does well there. And then Megan's back, I think, the next one at Road America. So we'll see what the two is. But Penske, we're in trouble, and I could just sense Roger Penske. He was sitting at the top of the pagoda as well, with all of his data screens in front of him. He spent so much money buying IndyCar, buying Indianapolis Motor Speedway as well, renovating it as well. He owns the Penske team, and I think he felt a little bit embarrassed yesterday.
And for those of you who don't subscribe to Josh's YouTube channel, you should, because yesterday he and his sister Megan, when they talked about Marcus Ericsson and the Arrow McLaren SB, I can say that, yeah, they were going absolutely crazy. So go watch along on Josh's YouTube channel.
I've lost my voice because of it. That's why I'm
croaky. Oh, I believe that, Josh. Oh, yeah. I believe that for a fact. And yeah, I was surprised we didn't see Team Penske up there. You know, normally when you think about the Indy 500, you know, Team Penske has always done good. You think about the Indy 500 is won by Rick Mears and Alan Sr. But this year, they were nowhere. I mean, Scott McLaughlin really didn't have good luck yesterday, you know, because of this crash. He had his family there from New Zealand, and they're all probably pretty devastated that he didn't do well. Will Power, he's a former Indy 500 winner. You know, he wanted to win number 2 yesterday. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. Joseph Newgarden, Roger, Team Penske can rebound next week, as they head to Detroit at Belle Isle Park. So it's going to be the big race because it's all the big American manufacturers are located there in Detroit. So it's going to be interesting to see how Team Penske can bounce back this coming weekend in Detroit after a lackluster Indy 500.
Yeah, we're certainly going to be paying attention to Belle Isle Park this weekend since it's the very last Detroit Grand Prix at Belle Isle Park because the race is going to be moving to the streets of downtown Detroit in the big city in 2023. So final time racing out there at beautiful Belle Isle. And my answer about Team Penske is going to surprise you all. I'm actually not surprised at all about them not totally not been a factor in this year's race because it's kind of weird since Simon Pagenaud won that exciting race in 2019, 2020, 2021, 2022. I don't know what happened to Team Penske. It seems like they kind of dropped off in performance at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway because in 2020 they weren't a factor. 2021 they weren't a factor well until the end because Simon Pagenaud was closing in on Elio Castroneves, Alex Palou, and Pato O'Ward up there at the end of last year's race. So besides that, we haven't really seen much from Team Penske in this race. As I mentioned, Scott McLaughlin looked like he had the best Penske car yesterday. Just got caught up in that accident there. Joseph Newgarden, he hovered around 11th and 15th all day. Wasn't really a factor at all. Will Power had some issues and he had to restart at the back end and had to. And he had to try to claw his way back, but it just did not work for Will Power. And as I mentioned, his top 5 streak had ended. So it's gonna be interesting to see after a rough Indy 500 if Will Power can reclaim that momentum.
Interesting. What you said there just rang a bell. Since 2020, that's exactly when Roger Penske took over IndyCar. So I'm starting to think as well, is this now becoming sort of like a superstitious thing where racing drivers and racing teams are very superstitious? It's very good luck to have good runs at your home track. But mainly, if you own everything as you do, it never goes right for you. It's like a curse. So I wonder if this is becoming like a superstitious thing, that there's too much pressure on the drivers. It's always in the back of the mind that because this is Roger's home, he owns the track, he owns the team, he owns the series. Is this now like they're trying to overperform? And that's why we're seeing so many mistakes. Because if you think about it, in every 500, 1 or 2 of the Penskes have crashed since he took over. That's in the back of my mind. I've been thinking about it, and it's been happening again and again and again. Pagenaud put it in the wall in 2022, obviously we have McLaughlin, and I think in 21 there was a crash there. I can't remember which one, but one of them definitely went in the wall. So
yeah, interesting perspective there, Josh. And during the race, we saw several drivers crash out. Starting with Rinus VeeKay while he was running in second place. Rinus very frustrated because he looked like he was the only one who was really capable of fighting Scott Dixon, Alex Palou early on during the race. So missed opportunity there for VeeKay, and also he's looking to sign his next IndyCar contract. So I'm sure that certainly didn't help things at all. We also saw Callum Ilott, Roman Grosjean both crashed in turn 2. We already mentioned Scott McLaughlin and Jimmy Johnson, but it was Sage Karam who brought out the final in racing and caution on the final lap. The track was very hot. The track temperature got all the way up to 119 degrees, so it made passing very difficult. And on pre-race show, we really talked about how for IndyCar to really put on a great show with a lot of passing, we needed to have cooler temperatures with cloud cover. Unfortunately, we didn't get that yesterday, and that's why we saw limited amount of overtaking, but still we were able to see some decent racing, especially on the restarts. Adam, where does this year's Indy 500 rank compared to past Indy 500s in recent memory?
Well, to me, first of all, Joe mentioned in the beginning, there were no restrictions for the first time in 2 years. It was just pure awesome to see fans line up at gate 1 at 6 a.m. getting ready to watch Indy 500. To see them singing back home again in Indiana. For those of you who may not know, Jim Neighbors used to sing that song, Back Home Again in Indiana. And now it's Jim Corneliuson. To see fans there from all across the world, to see the stands completely packed, the infield was packed, all the campers, even the snake pit. It felt normal to me, for the first time in a couple of years since this pandemic has been going on. The racing was intense. It was awesome. It was excellent. And to see someone like Marcus Ericsson, who to win the Indy 500 for Chip Ganassi, I was very happy. And I saw online, he only got 2 hours of sleep. So he was back at the track this morning taking pictures with his winning car with the World Grand Trophy. So and I wish we had Husky chocolate here in the USA, since I would go and buy some. Unfortunately, I can't.
If I find it in the UK anywhere, I'll ship some over to each and every one of you over
there. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate that.
I'll get on the hunt for it.
Yes.
That all sounds great. Listen, I thought it's up there. It was a very good race, I think. I don't know that I'd quite put it level with last year, because obviously last year you had enough of the crowd back that I think it was starting to feel pretty close to normal. They say they capped it at 140,000 or whatever it was. I think they actually put a few more fans in there. Obviously not full capacity like it was this year, where you had whatever it was, 325,000. Just spectacular number. So great to see all the fans back. And obviously last year, Elio getting his fourth, it was going to be hard to top that unless Elio had gotten his fifth or something like that. But I thought the racing was pretty good. Obviously we had a couple more incidents than we had last year, but I thought, the racing that we saw was also solid, and it was very, very good race. I still feel like the pacing of the race went by pretty quickly. I feel like I blinked. I even tweeted that. I said I blinked and the race is already a third of the way over. So, it certainly kept along at a good pace. But one thing I didn't like was the red flag at the end. And people know how I feel about overtime in NASCAR.
Yep.
And I will give the IndyCar series credit. At least the Indianapolis 500 ended at mile 500. NASCAR can't say that. The Coca-Cola 600 turned into the Coca-Cola 619 and a half. And we'll get into that race a little bit later on. But it's still the idea of wanting to manufacture a green flag finish. If that Jimmy Johnson crash had happened on lap 60, that would not have been a red flag. To me, a red flag should only be thrown when it absolutely has to be thrown for safety reasons. And in that particular instance, the red flag was thrown because it happened with 6 laps to go, and IMS wanted to give the fans that came out to the track a green flag finish. I'm not a fan of that. I'm thankful that Marcus Ericsson won, and actually the entire top 5 from when the caution happened to when you look at the race results and the box score, it's all the same. So I don't really know what IMS gained out of that, what the IndyCar series gained out of that, because the results sheet looks exactly the same as if the race had just ended under caution or whatever the case may be there. But, it's the second time in recent years that we did this. Obviously, it happened in 2014 as well when Ryan Hunter-Reay won. And even then, I think Kurt Busch had to be getting nervous that year because he had to hop on a plane to get to Charlotte for his second race of the day. That was the year that he did the double. Obviously, nobody had to worry about that this year, but it's still, I would rather let's throw red flags for red flag incidents. Let's not throw it to try to manufacture a green flag finish. When you're talking about the Indianapolis 500, these cars at this speed on this track at the Indianapolis 500, you're just asking for trouble if you try to manufacture a 2-lap shootout where everybody only has 2 laps to get everything they can. Thankfully, we only saw one car, Sage Karam, go into the wall, and that was that. But, I didn't have a good feeling on the restart, and I feel like, red flags should only be thrown when they need to be, but that's just my opinion. It was weird to hear cheers for a red flag. That's probably the first time in certainly in a long time that I've heard cheers as the flagman displayed the red flag. So that was kind of an interesting perspective there. So I know there are a lot of fans who don't agree with that assessment, but that's where I stand.
They must have been watching Monaco, those fans as well, because that could turn into a crack. I'll get into that one. Yeah, but from my commentary box point of view of it all, and commentating that race as well, I've got comments on the YouTube scene saying, "Oh, IndyCar doesn't have green, white, checkered," and I was like, "No, but they do it. They do it because we've seen this how many times now as well. That a couple laps to go, there's a caution. Oh, we're going to red flag the race. We saw it at Belle Isle a couple of years ago as well.
It was Erickson's first win.
Yeah, yes. And yeah, exactly. Nashville red flagged it last year. And do you remember, was it last year at Bale race 2?
Yeah, yeah. Well, Erickson won both of those races, but the Belle Isle win was, that was when Power was leading the race and his car wouldn't refire. So how do you think he felt about the red flag situation?
And that's what was worrying me when I was looking at it yesterday, thinking that, oh my God, if Erickson doesn't refire, then that's completely unfair because we were 6 laps to go. The race should have ended behind the caution. I completely agree with you, Ben, as well. It was not a red flag needed situation. And when I got told that they'd gone red, I was like, what? Are you joking me? Thinking about it as well, this is a habit that we keep getting into where the red flag comes out with 5 to go or 4 to go. And F1's been doing it as well. Baku last year, prime example. I said it in the commentary. Red flag with 7 laps to go. Is this what we're going to do now? Because we didn't do it in Abu Dhabi for F1. So there's no consistency, not only in Formula 1, but there's no consistency in IndyCar or other series as well that do it. Formula E did it in Sanya in 2019 as well. It's not part of the rules. You stop the race when there is danger to drivers, to marshals, or to fans. Nothing else. Everything else that's what the safety car is designed to do. The safety car was brought in order to neutralize the race when it doesn't need to be stopped. And I think that's where we need to find the limit. I think all the race directors from everywhere needs to understand what it should be, because yesterday in total we saw 3 red flags, 2 in Formula 1, 1 in IndyCar, and realistically only one of those red flags was needed. And that was the Schumacher crash, because the red flag for the rain didn't need to happen because we could have just delayed the start because the rain was coming down. We already knew it was going to get heavier. So sending them out for 2 laps for nothing was ridiculous. The Schumacher crash should have been an instant red flag. We'll get onto that later in the Monaco review that we're doing. But for IndyCar, why wasn't Grosjean's crash, which was much, much, much heavier into the wall, why wasn't that a red flag? Where's the consistency? It bugs me beyond belief. And we'll get into the reason as well when we do Coke 600, or you guys will. That was also a case for a red flag because we had a car barrel rolling. Fair enough. But that was at half distance. And then you'll talk about overtime. I'm looking forward to, Ben, your speech about that as well. But there's no consistency anymore. And as race fans and as broadcasters, it's screaming to me that they just don't care. It's like they're just focused on giving the most entertainment to fans, but it's the wrong target of fans, as you alluded to, Ben, as well. It's the diehard motorsport fans, as we all are here as well, and everybody who watches these shows as well. We are diehard fans. We love to see good racing, fair racing, and when things like this happen, you have to think, oh, this is designed for the influencer crowd, the people who watch Drive to Survive, MotoGP Unlimited, NASCAR's The Heat on Netflix and things like that. It's not designed for the pure motor racing fan. It's designed for the people who float in, oh, it's a good race, it's a good finish, and then float back out again. Some people as well, you mentioned, Adam, about the snake pit. It really annoys me because we've got a great race going on and there's about 2,000-3,000 people crammed into the snake pit who've got no care in the world that there's a motor race going on. Why is the snake pit there when it could be showing the race with all the music? I understand it's a party atmosphere, but people would kill to be in that infield section. And it's just, I feel like we're slipping. We're slipping away from where sport is sport into where now it's entertainment. And it makes me worry. It really does, about the state of motor racing going into the future. I want to see fair racing, hard racing, because that's what I fell in love with, not Love Island or The Bachelor, things like that. Not artificial racing. That's not what I want to see.
you guys bring up a lot of excellent points. And Formula E driver Lucas Di Grassi, he said on Twitter, "American motorsport equals show," and it's simple and well put, because that's exactly what American motorsport is for the most part. And we've also seen some racing series in Europe as well, also trend into that direction. Not as often, but they're really starting to put entertainment over sport integrity. And yeah, I totally agree. That is very frustrating to see all the inconsistencies all across motorsports. But to be honest, I've kind of lost hope that we're gonna get some consistency across the board. I don't. I think we're gonna keep seeing those inconsistent calls, and we're all gonna keep complaining about it, and nothing will change. And getting back to the question about where this Indy 500 ranks among the others, I definitely don't think it tops last year's. That was a really special win for Elio Castroneves. We saw a lot more passing and all of that. But this year it was quite a result for Marcus Ericsson. We expected a Chip Ganassi Racing Honda to get the win, but Erickson probably was not the driver that we expected to get the job done. So kudos to him for that. And Marcus is really, as I mentioned, has been really improving his racecraft. And I think this, obviously winning Indy 500 is life changing for any driver, and this will certainly change Marcus Ericsson's life for the better. I thought it was a decent Indy 500 this year. I'm looking forward to the 107th running of the greatest spectacle in racing in 2023. And before we move on to the next section, we have a question in the chat room, I believe, if that can be displayed on the screen from a day in the life. Oh, and this is a question for Josh and then Ben, and the question for you two: if IndyCar and Formula One others introduce a new flag or permanent rule to stop the race to get a green finish, less upset because it's not a red flag. And then he says, if the red flag at the end is in the rule book and the drivers know about it, then I have no problem with it. So if you guys wanted to respond to his comment.
Go ahead, Josh.
Oh, okay. I was being kind, but okay. If it was written to the rules that if we go into a 5 laps to go and there's a safety car and there's a red flag, I wouldn't have a problem with that rule in all, but it would have to come with conditions like it's a rolling start, not a standing start like we had in Baku. Yes, that was very dramatic, but that's unfair to quite a lot of people. We saw Vettel on the podium where realistically he would have been 5th or 6th. So I think in Formula One, if there's a red flag with 5 to go, it comes with a rolling start, not a standing start. In terms of IndyCar, they've been doing it, and we see it doesn't really work. If it's written to the rules, I suppose we'll have to agree with it. But as I said, come with conditions. But overall, I think my point still stands. We shouldn't. If the safety car is already there, that's my point. There's a solution to this, and they've had it since the 90s. And in terms of IndyCar, they've had it since the 60s. The safety car is there as a way to red flag the race without stopping the cars or the lap counter. That's what it's designed for, to neutralize the race, but keep it ticking down. And use it correctly. That's what we need. For instance, Indy yesterday, we didn't need red flags. There didn't need to be a red flag. We were on course, believe it or not, to have one of the fastest ever Indy 500s. Last year's still remains on record, I think 2 hours, 35 minutes or so. Megan was reading out yesterday, as well as one of the fastest ever. And this year we were on course for it, but then we had that last caution and it pushed us over to and the red flag pushed us over, I think, the 3-hour mark nearly. So we've got the safety car. Use it. That's my opinion on it. Don't stop the race because there's an accident. Don't stop the race because of that. Unless there needs to be severe medical attention to anybody, which requires the race to be stopped or the track is blocked or things like that, then stop the race. If a car has just stopped at the side of the track, like what we saw with Jimmy Johnson, like what we saw in Formula One in 2020, can't remember, but 2021 with Verstappen, then we don't need to stop the race. We can just finish under the safety car because it gets a bit Netflix of an ending. They want to build up the cliffhanger. And as we all know, cliffhangers are great, but the finals are very rarely better then the higher you were left at the cliffhanger.
Real quick comment from Michael Tiller here. Very happy for Checo. Correct me if I'm wrong, but is this his main Monaco win? It is. Third career win after Sakir in 2020 with Racing Point. Then he got the win at Baku last year. It's ironic Josh was just talking about that when talking about the red flags. But that was his second win, his first with Red Bull. And then, of course, the Monaco win yesterday. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in the show. To answer a day in the life's question, I suppose it would be less ambiguous. And I would be happy that at least there's some clarity in the rules that state when we're going to do it, when we're not going to do it. But overtime is written in the rules as well for NASCAR, and you know how I feel about that. So I still, it's like Josh was saying, it's the principle of the thing. When you have the safety car there to neutralize the race for an incident that needs to have the cars not be running at race pace speed, but we don't need to bring them all into the pits and stop to clean the track for 15 minutes or whatever the case may be. The red flag should be used when it's appropriate. It was appropriate at Monaco yesterday because the rain was just too much to even use the wet weather tires and hold a race there. It was appropriate at Charlotte yesterday because Chris Buescher barrel rolled however many times and needed assistance to climb from his car as they were flipping the car back over. It wasn't needed yesterday for Jimmy Johnson's incident. Like I said, if that crash had happened at lap 60 or lap 160, it would not have been a red flag. The only reason it was a red flag was because they wanted to get a green flag finish for the fans that attended the race. That's the only reason the red flag was brought out. They got what they wanted, and the race results still look exactly the same anyway. So it's the principle of the thing. I'm not a fan of it. End of discussion.
Yeah, end of discussion. I guess we'll move on to the next discussion. Starting with Scott Dixon, who led the most laps and came home in 21st place. Disappointing result after being the one to beat all day, and also dropped him down quite a bit in the championship. So it's gonna be an uphill battle for Scott Dixon to get up there back in the fight. Elio Castroneves, he didn't complete the drive for 5, but still a respectable finish. Came home 7th. And if you watch the post race coverage on Peacock, Elio walked down the front stretch and waving at the fans. Makes me wonder if this could be the final time we see him at the Speedway, or if he's going to be able to come back next year and try to keep the drive for 5 alive for as long as he possibly can. And Colton Herta, we saw that big crash and flip on Carb Day. They got his backup car ready to go, but to say the least, his backup car was terrible. It had no speed, and they eventually had to park it for the day because they had issues, and it was just way too slow. He couldn't really do anything with it. And with the 106th Indianapolis 500 in the books now, what were your main takeaways from this year's race?
It's Chip Ganassi's world, and we're all just living in it. This guy has always brought fast cars to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. You've always thought of his number 9 and number 10 teams as being the contenders, and like I said, it looked like they were going to be the contenders with Scott Dixon and Alex Palou. But even when they both fell out with issues, one just a matter of circumstances, the other a rare mistake from a 6-time series champion and 2008 500 winner, even with that, he home first and third with Marcus Ericsson and Tony Kanaan. I mean, can we talk about Tony Kanaan for a second? What a drive that he had to come home with. I know the Indy 500 doesn't do a podium like they do everywhere else, but a podium finish for him in, however many Indy 500s he's done. I hope it's not his last. Selfishly, I hope that he can come back next year. But imagine if he was up there fighting for the win, and how great was it to see Tony Kanaan back up there again. So Chip Ganassi and his team, they brought really fast cars to the track all month long. They deserved to win the race, and it ended up being that one of their 5 drivers, we said the winner is probably sitting somewhere in this picture, ended up being Marcus Ericsson. So well done to Chip Ganassi Racing. That's my main takeaway.
Jimmy Johnson was fast in practice, and he had a good qualifying position. Didn't really do anything in the race. He's after starting 12th, he fell back and he crashed out. I surely thought that Jimmy Johnson was gonna be a factor to win. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. And I'll agree with what you said, Ben. It's Chip Ganassi's world, and it's hard to beat him there at the Brickyard. We see the grid ranking here for the IndyCar on screen. If we could bring that back up, Marcus Ericsson now is 3rd, and I mean, after his win, he now is in the top 5. Willpower. So, congratulations to Marcus Ericsson. He proved that, hey, I can win on an oval just as much as on a road course or a street course. And props to you, Josh. Like Joe said, you're the only one to pick him for pick a winner. I gotta give you credit where the credit's due.
Thank you. I'll take a bow. I'll take a bow. I nearly ripped my earphones out as well as I do that. My God, that was a bad idea. Whose idea was this? I'll hold the cable that's giving me my earphones. I'll take a bow. Thank you very much. Yes. Yes, got it bang on. And to be fair, I think I need lottery numbers after that because I've just predicted the most unpredictable race on the planet. So that is something of a genius move. I think I'll agree with my colleagues here as well on their 2 points about Jimmy Johnson and on Marcus Ericsson as well. It is Chip Ganassi as well who's really taken this one. Sato impressed me throughout the practice sessions. He was, as we were going through practice 4 just before qualifying, I was thinking he could do it here. He could become a 3-time champion as well. During the race as well, Cash Neves had a horrible 500, but got a top 10. And when that red flag came out, I said to Megan as well, he's in 9th. He could just do this as well. So I was really excited to see what could happen after that red flag, but I didn't want to see the red flag, obviously, as we've discussed. My main, though, definitely Marcus Ericsson, consistent throughout the 500, constantly up there. It just proves that if you come to Indianapolis, you've got to respect it, you've got to respect the team, and you've got to know your stuff. And he did it. He did his homework, bang on, got it where it needed to be, and he just flew throughout the entire race as well. Right time, right place, many say? Well, let me tell you something. Matthew Owens gave me a stat. Out of the last 11 Indy 500, 8 times a driver has led lap 190. They have failed to win. That now becomes, in 12, 8. Fantastic. Fantastic for Marcus.
And before I get into my answer, I believe we have some comments in the chat room to read. Michael Tiller talked about when we were discussing Monaco. He said, "Yeah, the rain was horrible. The rain at Monaco can be tricky, especially with the tunnel." Yeah, Michael, that's true. You have rain tires outside, and then when you get in the tunnel, you know it's going to be dry in there, and that's not good for rain tires. All and you also said, "Hats off to Marcus Ericsson, well driven." Yeah, that was quite a job, well done. And he also said Marcus Ericsson dead in the life. He's a proper IndyCar driver. Yes, Marcus is really showing what he can do behind the wheel in an IndyCar. It really gives him a great opportunity to showcase all the skills that he wasn't able to show us during his time in Formula One. So IndyCar IndyCar already is an attractive option for Formula One drivers who might be towards the end of their career or might be in threat of losing their seat. I wonder if some Formula One drivers who are in that position might strongly consider coming over to IndyCar because they might have a chance to win the greatest spectacle in racing. And that will definitely obviously be a wonderful accomplishment to put on their career. My key takeaways from this year's Indy 500, I have the official results right here, so I'm just going to go down and just say what's on my mind. Ben, you brought up Tony Kanaan. That was such an impressive run by the 47-year-old Brazilian. The guy's almost 50 years old, and he's got a podium at the Indianapolis 500. As I mentioned, this very well could be his last 500 because he doesn't have anything lined up for next year. But I will say, if this is Kanaan's final Indy 500 and his final IndyCar start in general, well done, TK. Well done. That would be the perfect way for him to go out to showing that yes, I'm almost 50, but I still got it behind the wheel. And then you have Felix Rosenquist who finished in fourth. We talked a lot about him. His future right now in IndyCar is uncertain. So I feel like Felix really needed a result. He was strong on the previous level we had at Texas Motor Speedway, but he had some issues. Unfortunately, didn't get the finish he wanted. Actually, Felix has run really well on other tracks, but he just hasn't been able to put together a full race. So I'm sure that feels really good for him to get that done to show that I'm capable of remaining in the IndyCar series long term. And How about a shot to Alexander Rossi in fifth? Like Rosenquist, Rossi hasn't been able to put together a lot of complete races lately with a lot of things going wrong. So I'm sure that really feels good for his confidence as well. Connor Daly, sixth place finish, a real great run for him. And Santino Ferrucci, his fourth consecutive top 10 finish in the Indianapolis 500. I actually wrote about that at the podium FedEx.net. Considering all of the things needed to go your way, quite impressive for Santino, showing up in a one-off with Jordan Rumble, continuing his top 10 streak. In the final takeaway, you mentioned Adam Jimmy Johnson. 28th place probably has to be a major disappointment for him. I really expected more out of Jimmy during this race. I didn't expect him to win. I expected him to at least get a top 15 finish, but I don't know what happened with the number 48 Carvana Honda. Maybe they just completely missed the setup with the warmer temperatures. Maybe it was just his inexperience of competing in this event after we saw him perform extremely well on the mile-and-a-half track at Texas. I thought we were going to see Jimmy Johnson run very competitively in the Indianapolis 500, but this year it was definitely a clear struggle for him. And if he decides to come back next year for this race, it'll be interesting to see if he'll improve his performance.
Going to be interesting to see what happens at next year's Indianapolis 500. And of course, one of the other races, the first race to kick off the full day of racing yesterday, MotoGP at the Mugello circuit, the Italian Grand Prix. And Joshua, this race turned into something very exciting. We saw Jorge Martin, 363 kilometers per hour, which translates to 226 miles per hour, the fastest top speed of a MotoGP recorded in the race. Ducati, top speed, heavy favorites, but there was only one on the podium. Pecco Bagnaia took his second win in 2022, with Quartararo making a great drive to claim second place in the Yamaha, where we saw no other Yamaha in the top 15. Aleix Espargaro, another third place finish. He is fourth this year. Is his worst finish. It's amazing. What him and Aprilia is doing. Right behind Quartararo in the championship picture as well. And then Nea Bastianini, he crashed out. Not a great weekend. So are we looking at Bagnaia, Bastianini, Aleix Espargaro, and Quartararo as the four championship contenders, and is everyone else championship hope fading away?
This MotoGP season seems to be going by in a flash as well. It seems like there's just one every single day. We're already finished round 8 of the season, and there's only 20 now on the calendar, with Finland dropping off as well. So we're almost at half distance. So, yeah, we've got to start talking championship. Bagnaia, Quartararo, and Aleix Espargaro. We expect the Ducatis to be fast here. They were in the end of practice 3. There was 7 of them inside the top 8. That's impressive. I think Aprilia were the only ones splitting the way with Aleix Espargaro. Yamaha came out of absolutely nowhere with Fabio Quartararo to get that second place after a lightning getaway at the start as well. So great job there. I definitely think as well, Bastianini had a bad weekend. He was here, there, everywhere. Fabio Di Giannantonio got pole, his teammate, which is very unusual. His first ever, couldn't convert it into a win. But yeah, I think we're now looking at our 4 title contenders in the way of Quartararo, Aleix Espargaro, Bastianini, and Bagnaia. They are the 4 to look forward to as we approach the halfway stage of the season and look to the second half when it really is going to get dramatic. Because this year, Quartararo hasn't walked away with it. Bagnaia stepped up. He's got up there as well. We've got Bastianini and the Ganassi going quick as well. And floating around there, as we said, Aleix Espargaro on that Aprilia. First time we've seen Aleix in this position before. He doesn't want to let it go. Aprilia have found a silver bullet into everyone else's armor. This is going to be a great second half of the year.
Yeah, it's already crazy to say second half of the year's approaching. Aprilia, wow, they are just surprising everybody. This year has just been plenty of surprises, and of course the big surprise news a few weeks ago, Suzuki, they're leaving. And it seems once that announcement was made, the team has seemed to lose hope and momentum. Since the news broke, Suzuki, they have not scored a point. Both riders crashed out near seconds of each other, with first Juan Mir going out and then Alex Rins going out later on. We see some teams, when they know this is the last year, they rally behind and they put on together a championship effort, really unify the team. We've also seen in other motorsports as well, when they know it's the last year, it becomes toxic. Things fall apart. It just becomes to the point where the season can't finish soon enough. Is Suzuki heading down the wrong path, and can it be turned around, especially if we start seeing a toxic environment or just lackluster finishes?
I'm telling you now, I don't see Suzuki finishing the season because the way they announced it as well, everybody was expecting to keep going with Suzuki. They only won a championship in 2020, and they were right up there in 2021. And then all of a sudden this year, they've said, nope, that's it. We're backing out. We're pulling out. Nobody is stepping in to save the team. Nobody is stepping in at this stage as well to save the riders. So Mia and Rins is now looking around, but everywhere's full up as well. So Mia and Rins are angry with the team as well. There's a lot of hostility down there as well. The team is dejected because they worked so hard over the past 7 seasons as well to get up there. They got there in 2020. They got what they wanted, and the team won a high. And then this year, it's crashed as well. So honestly, I don't see them finishing the year. I think we're going to see a lot of team members of that walking away, filling roles at the other team as well, and just sort of being absorbed into the paddock as well. Mia and Rins might decide walking away as well. As you said, they haven't scored a point since, and they crashed out on the same lap this weekend as well. They had about as bad a weekend as Haas did as well. But I honestly, I'm so upset about Suzuki. I thought they were going to be right up there as the future stars, and it's all come to a very public defeat, and it's not nice. It's like watching an execution that's going wrong. The guillotine just won't cut the head off yet. They're pulling it up, letting it go, and just blood spurting everywhere, and it's affecting other people in the paddock. The morale has definitely shifted since it got announced in Spain. It's unbelievable.
Very unbelievable. 2020, seeing what Mir was doing, 1 win to consistency. This year, we know they have a better bike, a faster bike. It's just such a shame that they're leaving, and it just seems like things are not going to go great for Suzuki. It'll be really interesting to see. I mean, we know MotoGP, they were talking about, okay, you guys have a contract with us. If they were to pull out earlier, not complete the season, boy, I think MotoGP is going to look into something in the future. One team?
Yeah, I think there'll be contracts like F1 see the Concord Agreement. MotoGP will very much enforce theirs. They've got one, but they'll hold it tight as well, and no team will dare leave for a number of years.
Now, one team on a high from Mugello, Mooney VR 46, up front and overall great finishes, 5th and 6th place for both their riders. They were outmuscled by the big teams. Zarco, he came up to the front. And, of course, he's with Jack Miller's old team. Jack Miller, a really dreadful race. While all the guys were up front, battling for the lead, he was mid-pack, nowhere in sight. Of course, we know he had the tough break with Marquez following him to get into the Q2 when Mark Miller missed out. We know Jack Miller's future is uncertain. He even said he'll be happy to go back to Pramac, where he came from. But could Jack Miller potentially be squeezed out of MotoGP with a crazy silly season that got going on this year?
I honestly think he could. And to be fair, I don't think he'll mind. I don't think he will. I think he's actually got his head turned by what's happening in World Superbikes right now as well. There's a lot of rumors floating around that he wants to go race there for a season as well. So I think Miller has already, we said this before on another broadcast as well on the Grid Network, that Miller said previously, if they want me to go to Pramac and let some of the younger guys come through, I'm happy to go there. So already Miller said, okay, I don't want to be competitive. I don't want to win the championship. I'm just happy racing. So it's not that big of a leap to say, okay, I'm not having fun in MotoGP anymore. I'll go to something else. So I reckon if he's forced out, I think it'll be a mutual parting of the ways rather than out the door, bang, kicked out like that. Don't try that in jeans, by the way. Sorry, Joe, can't hear you.
I was muted. Guys kissed out there, so it's like, uh-oh. So, but yeah, that was very impressive what you said about don't kick in the jeans. But yeah, it just seems like I think World Superbikes could be the place to go. I know some people have said that's sort of like the IndyCar of motorcycle racing because there's a lot of more spec parts compared to MotoGP. They build the bike from the ground up, so it's going to be really interesting to see what Jack Miller's future is. And taking a look at the MotoGP grid rating, as you can see, Jack Miller 7th. He is not in the grid ranking. The top 5 advanced to the grid ranking, which we'll display later on. But first, we're going to go over Formula One action with a busy, chaotic Monaco Grand Prix.
Yeah, the Monaco Grand Prix gave many fans heartburn because of the delayed start before the race delay allowed the teams to select tires as heavy rain approached the circuit. After two delays, the heavy rain showed up during the formation lap, red flag in the race about an hour later than the original start time. The race got underway but ended about 45 minutes before the Indy 500 started. The delayed start prevented potential chaos on the opening laps, but controversy still happened. Some said the race should have started on time and left up to the teams to decide what to do. The race ended about an hour into NBC Sports' pre-race coverage of the Indy 500. The race director's priority is driver safety and getting a race completed, not ending before the Indy 500. And it's been reported by credible media outlets such as motorsport.com that a power outage was the main cause for the delay. Starting with you, Josh, did you agree with the call to delay the start and should race directors be more cautious in wet weather situations after last year's fiasco with Spa and do whatever it takes to avoid controversies not generated by the on-track action itself?
The F1 race directors this weekend, which is Eduardo Freitas, and the entire race control seem to be acting too slowly this season as well. That's what my concern was. The red flag with the rain as well. Yes, of course, it was the right call to throw the red flag for that amount of water. What I didn't agree with was the fact that they delayed the start. So I've done some digging as well, and Ted Kravitz has very helpfully reported what the problem is as well, and so has Scott Mitchell as well from motorsport.com. Now, the first delay was at 5-minute signal. And the formation lap was rescheduled for 9 minutes past the hour. Now, the reason that delay happened was because they had a power cut to the entire start procedure. So the 5 lights and all the little panels up and down the side of the track for the drivers failed. So they couldn't reboot the system in time. So that explained the first delay. Then during that time, the FIA saw the weather coming in and decided when they were going to start the formation lap, the rain bucketed it down as well, the heaviest as well before the race started. And all the teams were then like, oh, this could be interesting then. Then the FIA announced that the race will now start at 16 minutes past the hour and it will be formation laps behind the safety car. That was because of the level amount of water on the track. They thought, okay, this is going to take a while. So we'll do the normal procedure of formation laps behind the safety car and take 1 lap off the race distance, and everyone fitted with extreme wet tires. They tried that, and when they were going round, Eduardo Freitas said it would be a standing start. But then they had a second power cut to the 5 red lights. At that time, they never got them working. The green lights could be shown and the amber lights, but the actual start sequence wouldn't initiate. During that red flag, the TV picture never showed it. They actually tried the start procedure and it kept failing on the 3rd light. So it wasn't showing lights 4 and 5. And when they were all extinguished as well, they flashed back on the 5 lights themselves. So Eduardo Freitas had no choice but from then on to do the rolling restarts. That explains why when Mick Schumacher crashed and the red flag came out and it was perfectly dry conditions, we had to have a rolling start because the lights had failed. So we've seen it in Formula E in Hong Kong. When the lights fail, it's a safety car start. It's just natural. So that explains what the reason were for the rolling starts and the first delayed start. The red flag mess as well, I found it very unlucky for the FIA because they sort of got pushed into the situation with the rain. Another F1 wet race yesterday gets messy. Yeah, it seems like the FIA just can't make up their minds with it all. So with that delay, we hit the heavy rain. If the race had started on time at 3 o'clock, it would have been a 5-light procedure if there wasn't a power cut. We would have got at least 4 laps in, then it would have been red flag, and then we would have had another go at it. So it was just a comedy of errors for that first red flag procedure.
I know we've got a long show and we're a little bit behind, so I don't want to take up too much time here, but I completely agree with everything Josh said there. And I think that, either we're going to race in the rain or we're not. I think obviously when we got to the red flag that, that's a point where, like I said a little bit earlier, you can't, even the wet weather tires can't disperse that much water that quickly. And even if they could, you've got the spray that's going to kick up and affect everybody at the back of the field. So that was obviously a situation where they needed the red flag. I didn't like how the start had to be delayed. I didn't like the fact that the rain stopped and then we were still scrambling and it took far too long to get the drivers back in the cars and get the race back underway. So I think there's certainly some things that need to be sorted out. Obviously, we know that the debacle at Spa last year is something that we can never afford to see anything like that again. Obviously, Monaco, we got the race in yesterday, so that was good. But there does need to be some clarification as to what we're going to do in future situations like this.
And moving on to our next subject, Haas F1 had a difficult weekend. A weekend to forget with a double DNF at Monaco. Magnussen retired, and then we had the red flag for Mick Schumacher's big stunt, brought out an additional delay for repairs to the barriers, which saw the back end of his car ripped off, which was really surprised me. The red flag neutralized the competition. Everyone selected the tires they wanted. No further pit stops were needed, and became a procession with no further passes. Fernando Alonso held up a bunch of cars, essentially Lewis Hamilton and others behind. However, with less than 10 minutes remaining, the grinding on Checo's tires caused him to slow a bit, but he ended up holding on. Sergio Perez beating Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen to win his first Monaco Grand Prix. However, Charles Leclerc finished fourth, his first finish in Monaco at home, but Ferrari made a costly mistake that ultimately ruined his race, keeping Leclerc out too long in the first round of pit stops. He came out behind Perez the second stop, mistakenly pitted at the same time as Sainz, and lost to Verstappen and Sainz. Leclerc was angry during the red flag caused by Mick Schumacher because he knew Ferrari had thrown it away. How demoralizing is it to lose like that, especially when overtaking is limited at Monaco? Is Red Bull's 4-race winning streak a concern for Ferrari?
Well, what did I say yesterday? What can go wrong will go wrong. We saw it once again with Ferrari yesterday. Charles Leclerc finally got to run a Monaco Grand Prix and complete it to the finish, which is good. But it looked like he might be on course to finally win his home race. And even then, Ferrari messed the strategy up. That was textbook Ferrari strategy, getting caught out by Red Bull. And it's unfortunate that Leclerc not only couldn't win his home race, he didn't even end up on the podium. And Red Bull take the glory with Sergio Perez. It's absolutely demoralizing. And what we've seen the last several weeks from Ferrari and Leclerc in particular, I worry that if it's happening this early in the season, it's going to be much harder to recover from this, get your feet back under you, and try to take the fight to Red Bull for either the drivers or the constructors championships if you're the Ferrari team. So, like I said, just incredibly demoralizing to lose a race like that. And I saw some people saying, well, I'm on the edge of my seat. It's tense seeing how close these top four are together because it looks like Sainz is faster than Perez, but it's obviously impossible to overtake. And that's the point. Monaco is virtually impossible to overtake on, and you knew that pretty much the top four were going to finish like that unless one of them had a catastrophic failure or somebody made a mistake. So Ferrari absolutely threw the race away. It's unfortunate for Leclerc, but at the same time, Sergio Perez, even himself, you see on the screen there, only 15 points out. I don't know that he can match Verstappen's pace over the course of the season, but at this point right now, he is firmly in the championship fight. And you want to talk about Ferrari struggles as well. George Russell is ahead of Sainz in the points, and we've talked all about Mercedes struggles this season, but Russell's been having a phenomenal year given the limitations of the Mercedes where it is right now. So Ferrari certainly have some work to do to get themselves back together and regroup as the championship goes on.
Right now, it looks like Red Bull's going to run away with the driver championship and the constructor championship. I mean, Ferrari's getting upgrades at Silverstone for the British Grand Prix, so that may help them. But right now, Max Verstappen looks like he could go back to back as a Formula One world champion. I know there's still a lot more races to go, but right now you gotta beat Red Bull on track, and they got a lot of momentum their way, so it's going to be interesting to see going forward if Ferrari can knock off Red Bull. It don't look like it right now.
Yeah, and Adam, I actually don't think we should get ahead of ourselves and say that Red Bull's going to run away with the championship. We still have a lot of racing to go in this year's Formula One World Championship, and anything can happen. I certainly think Red Bull has all of the momentum right now over Ferrari, but But just because Red Bull is riding this winning streak right now, it doesn't mean Ferrari can really start taking it to them again. And Dan Life says Ferrari protest was nonsense. Yeah, I didn't really understand what all of that was about, but people are gonna try to play all these little mind games anytime they can. And Charles Leclerc defeat at home yesterday at Monaco. Oh my goodness, that has to be the worst feeling in the world. Before he literally just wanted to finish his home Grand Prix. Yet he finally got to do that, but he was in position to win at home. But unfortunately, Ferrari decided to go Ferrari with all of their strategy mishaps and really cost them. So I don't blame him at all for having that outburst on the radio because that race was his to lose, and unfortunately his race strategist lost him the Monaco Grand Prix. And talking about the Monaco Grand Prix in general, criticism really seems to be growing that Formula One has outgrown the streets of Monte Carlo. Could we see Monaco get dropped from the calendar, a race that's considered Formula One's premier crown jewel event, with the news of races like Las Vegas coming in the future? Some are wondering if it's time to let the past be the past and move forward with something more exciting, intriguing, and modern. So here's a question for everyone. Does Monaco belong on the Formula One calendar going forward?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like there's so much history there at the Principality. You think about the names that have won there: Senna, Schumacher. I mean, it's among others, and it's like it's one of you have so many celebrities attend the race every year. It's like a party atmosphere, and even though Las Vegas is coming on the schedule next year, another street circuit, if Monaco were to be off the F1 calendar, I think a lot of people would be mad. I mean, there's so much history there, so keep it on the schedule.
I'll tell you right now, any street circuit that comes on the calendar, every single one of them is a pale comparison to what Monaco has to offer. I would happily sit through a million boring Monaco races for what we got this weekend, because not only was Formula One brilliant, but Formula 2 was brilliant as well. Drugovich doing a Senna with defending as well. That was fab. I'm looking forward to talking with Ben later in the Encore show as well about that. But yesterday proved why Monaco is one of the great historic tracks. Anything can happen. When it rains at Monaco, luck be a lady tonight.
It's possible to believe two things at the same time. And in fact, I think I do on this particular subject. Monaco is the most historic race of the year. It has the most prestige. It has the most worldwide recognition. Even somebody who's not an F1 fan, if you mention Monaco to them, they usually know what you're talking about, a Grand Prix or some sort of race. People know that this race is very prestigious all over the world. And I think it would be a shame for it to fall off the calendar. You also have the atmosphere and like I said, the prestige of being at the track and at the event. There's a lot of attention focused on it. So yes, it deserves a place on the calendar. But I think at the same time, you also have to take a look at the product that it is putting on for the race fans. And I think it's not an unfair question to suggest that if this is your biggest race of a year, and this is what fans are tuning into, that maybe, they hear that this is a big race, they're tuning into Formula One for the first time. What about Monaco, aside from the glamour and the atmosphere, like I was mentioning, what draws them in to want to come back to another F1 race? And when you see, like I said, the 4-car procession yesterday, the train that was behind Fernando Alonso, the F1 cars are so massive now that it's a track where it already was almost impossible to overtake. Well, now it's virtually impossible to overtake. I know Gasly got a couple of good looks and opportunities yesterday, but it's just, I have a hard time reconciling it, because absolutely it should be on the calendar. I'm not joining the crowd that say, I hate this race so much, we shouldn't be going there. We've totally outlived it. Tom Dillon says, hey guys, love the stream. My opinion is that I'd take a single boring race in Monaco over any other racetrack any day. And I get this side of the argument as well. I don't want anybody to think for a minute that I'm saying it doesn't deserve a place on the calendar. It absolutely does. But I don't think we can let it get by on just the history and just the prestige at the same time. it's not an unfair question to say, what can we do to make the Monaco Grand Prix a more enjoyable race to watch aside from the glitz and glamour that comes with being in Monaco? I don't think it's an unfair question. And I think it's a question that a lot of race fans have when they look at the race year after year. If Josh wants to come in here real quick.
Yeah, get rid of Tele Monte Carlo. Let F1 produce it. I said this during the commentary as well. If F1 produced the TV coverage, Monaco would look amazing. It would feel so different. The energy would come alive. We as diehard fans watch it. We know what to look for. But for people coming in, as you say, Ben, as well, we get F1 producing it, not the local directors. Mwah. It'll be the best race of the year. Because they know what to look for. Go on, Kofi.
All right. Well, we do have some comments in the chat room. Very active this afternoon. So really appreciate all of our viewers for supporting us and being here. Michael Tiller said you heard rumors that Monaco would be taken off the calendar, but it shouldn't. Totally agree with you. I'm with everybody here. I don't think Monaco should be taken off, but I really agree with the points Ben was making. But we also can't excuse all the other issues as well. And he said not only that, but Monaco is a triple crown race in addition to the 24 Hours of Le Mans and the Indy 500. And he said, take that away, you hurt the triple crown, and you take away the history and the nostalgia. Totally agree with you, Michael. The Formula One without the Monaco Grand Prix is like IndyCar without the Indy 500 and NASCAR without the Daytona 500. I don't really see how you can justify taking away the Monaco Grand Prix. In general, this is Formula One's premier crown jewel event, and y'all brought up a good point. How if you ask the average person, what Monaco, they more than likely they've heard about it. Yesterday, I saw mainstream media outlets that typically cover just hard news for the most part. They were mentioning Sergio Perez wins the Monaco Grand Prix, Marcus Ericsson wins the Indianapolis 500. Media outlets that never ever mention motorsports unless it's a significant story, and that just shows you how important the Monaco Grand Prix is throughout the world, throughout the globe, because this is a historic worldwide event. Yeah, and a lot of celebrities, as you mentioned, attend this event every single year. If you're able to go to Monaco, that's great, because it's certainly a once in a lifetime experience. I'm sure we wish the racing was a lot better. I wonder if there are ways to update the Monaco circuit to try to make it more overtaking friendly. I'm not sure if that's possible, but it will be a sad day in Formula One if we get rid of the Monaco Grand Prix. So hopefully they're not going to do that.
And taking a quick look at the grid rating for Formula One, Max Verstappen continues to lead now 10 points ahead of Charles Leclerc. So a lot going on when it comes to Formula One. Of course, top 5 in the grid ranking. And there's one more comment about Monaco in the chat room. I know getting the triple crown is challenging, and Monaco is challenging. One person that TC, as far as I know, Lonzo, come close, of course, Graham Hill, the only person to get the triple crown. It's going to be really hard unless somebody that has won an F1 comes to IndyCar within the next few years, and then 24 Hours Le Mans or reverse order. It's very rare, but there's always that hope somebody could do it, and we see another triple crown winner. And of course, one of the big things, we follow all the racers around the world. So starting to look at some of the female racers that raced this past weekend. Hamda Al-Kabasi and Lena Buller were both in Monaco competing in a big packed fill of Formula Regional, 30-plus vehicles in the streets of Monte Carlo. Insane action going on. Amber Balkan, second top 10 in a row for her in the ARCA Menard series. Very exciting. And of course, Women in Motorsports, we're on the air Thursday, but be sure to subscribe to the Grid Network, as we are sometimes on the air Friday when Daniel's at the track talking to the drivers. And then the African American Race Association, some of the black racers that we had racing. Roger Caruth, wonderful effort. He is putting together good run after good run in the ARCA series. Really excited to see his potential in NASCAR someday. He's already done an Xfinity Series start, I believe. So he's very excited to see what his future is going to look like up ahead. And I see we have another comment in the chat room as well. To think Checo's win, he's in a good position to run for the title. Verstappen, Leclerc, and Perez. This is exciting. It'll be really exciting to have both Red Bulls contend for the championship. I think after what we saw the prior race, where Checo was asked to, hey, please let Max go through. I think they're not going to allow Checo a full shot at the title, but you never know. if Max was to have a couple DNFs and Checo was to get wins and the roles were reversed, then what do you do? And before, of course, Racing Pride, they didn't have none of their racing ambassadors on the track, but definitely we encourage you to visit the links for Racing Pride, the African American Racer Association, and women racers from Racers, the girls behind the helmet, in the video description as well. And my shining moment, I would say, from the weekend so far, we still got more racing. NASCAR's coming up, but my shining moment has to be VR46, their race weekend. That team, they were just celebrating like as if they won the race. They nearly got the podium, but overall, great weekend of racing. And now we go to the last race of the weekend, the NASCAR Cup Series, the Coca-Cola 619-mile race.
And Josh, before we get into that, I believe you're about to leave us, Josh. So if you want to share your one shining moment, you feel free to do that.
I think I might be stepping on toes here, but Marcus Ericsson. I think we all know it was coming, didn't we? Marcus Ericsson, and I'll throw in Sergio Perez as well. A true underdog day yesterday, not only for them two, but Sainz finishing second as well. So it's a shifting world, motorsport, and it was nice to see that yesterday the forgotten lot got some well-needed upper courage as well, and they got the cheers as well. I'm a very happy person right now, but a lemsip time for me, I think.
Thank you for sharing. Thank you for sharing, Josh. And we'll be sure to see you on Grid Live Encore tonight, talking about the sprint and feature races from Formula 2 on the streets of Monaco. And now moving on to the Coca-Cola 600, which was a race of survival with 17 cars not finishing, 19 on the lead lap. One of the top storylines coming out of the race was Chris Buescher. We talked about him going for a wild ride on the front stretch turf, digging in and flipping multiple times the rear side on a 1.5 mile track with 2 laps to go. Chase Briscoe spun out while racing Kyle Larson for the win and brought out the caution. That set up a couple of overtimes. The race lasted for a total of 5 hours and 13 minutes, the longest race ever, mile-wise, at 619.5 miles. So I guess you round up. We should have named this race the Coca-Cola 620. Denny Hamlin won his first Coca-Cola 600 and has now won all 3 Crown Jewel events in NASCAR: the Daytona 500, the Southern 500, and the Coke 600. Ben, starting with you, can this win give Hamlin momentum and turn around his inconsistent season?
I think so. I think the Gibbs cars certainly look like they are. They've stepped it up a little bit, and all of Toyota as well. You had 2311. Obviously, they got caught up in the accident during the race, but Kurt Busch and Bubba Wallace, great qualifying runs for both of them. Kurt Busch seems to get caught up by just a few thousandths of a second from time to time. You think of that Darlington finish with Ricky Craven, and then the pole qualifying times this weekend. It was just a matter of inches, the difference between his time and Denny Hamlin's. But I think Toyota certainly have stepped up quite a bit, and for Denny Hamlin in particular to come away with the win. Kind of chaotic how he got there from the pole position. You didn't think that he was going to win the race until the very end there, but great run for him. And, obviously his teammate Kyle Busch as well. And all of Toyota, I think, had really strong runs going. Hopefully they can build on this and give us some more competition up front, particularly with the Hendrick cars as the season goes on.
I was very happy to see Denny Hamlin win last night. I truly thought that Kyle Larson was going to win, and unfortunately that didn't happen. Though, I had picked Scott Dixon to win the Indy 500 and the Kyle Larson to win the Coca-Cola 600. Unfortunately, well, it didn't happen. But anyway, now Denny Hamlin can say he joins the list of drivers who have won those 3 Crown Jewels in NASCAR, and that's pretty impressive. It was a really good race, and very happy for Denny Hamlin and Kyle Busch, his teammate, finishing second, and everyone at Joe Gibbs Racing. I don't think anyone saw this coming, but it was an eventful race, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely one of the most eventful Coca-Cola 600s in recent memory. Denny Hamlin, Kyle Busch racing for the win. There at the end, we saw a lot of comers and goers all throughout the night. Early on, it was all the Toyotas running well. Some of their Toyotas had issues. Then we saw the Chevrolets go to the front. Saw a few of the Fords in the mix. It was just a lot of movement going on all around the track, and I'm sure Denny Hamlin's really glad he finally completed all of NASCAR Triple Crowns races. Went into Daytona 500, Southern 500, and Coca-Cola 600. That's certainly a NASCAR driver's dream. You certainly want to win in the Cup Series, but at the end of the day, you really want to say that you were able to check off all those crown jewel events. And I'm sure Denny Hamlin is really still smiling this morning that he won NASCAR's longest race, 619.5 miles in the Coca-Cola 600. And getting back to the question about his inconsistent season, that's 2 wins in the book now for Denny Hamlin. At the end of the day, that really what matters. But I'm sure he'd like to start running up there more consistently, where he'll have a great race, and then he'll have a stretch of races, where he's not finishing well. And the Coca-Cola 600 last year had 4 cautions. This year we had more cautions than the entire race last year. By the end of stage one, the cars were really a handful to drive, and we also saw a few tire issues as well. We saw lots of great racing with multiple grooves drivers being able to use every inch of the track from top to bottom. NASCAR got the right amount of track resting to get the higher groove worked in. The new car lot close racing, we saw those few tire issues I mentioned, but mostly drivers having a hard time holding on. Was this the best Coca-Cola 600 in your opinion in recent memory? And what do you think of the challenge of driving this new car at Charlotte?
Well, it was to say, with the amount of cautions we saw, you thought we were at Bristol. Kind of crazy. We saw, but anyway, it was the longest race with this new car. So, and it's the longest race that NASCAR has on the calendar all year long. It was nice to see different teams up there, starting in the daytime, going into night, and driving with this new car. It was very interesting. Hate to see Chris Buescher flipping at the end, but with this new car, there are tethers on the wheel, so when he flipped, none of the wheels went on track or up into the stand. So, and give credit to the NASCAR safety team. Very happy to see them execute getting Chris Buescher's car back on all fours. So it was a nice race. I will say that much.
Well, I think I owe Twitter an explanation because I was very surprised to look at the Jeff Gluck poll this morning and see that it's 92% yes, last I checked. Certainly, I knew that I was going to be in the minority. I personally voted no. I know that might come as a surprise to a lot of people. We see you have a comment here from A Day in the Life saying the race was too crazy for me. So maybe there's at least one person here that is in agreement with me. Maybe the race could have been a little bit better. Michael Tiller also says, hard to hear 17 cars not finish the Coke 600, but what more can they do? We'll get into one of those things a little bit later on here in regards to the damaged vehicle policy, but this was the main issue for me. Somebody even said this morning on social media, I can't remember the last Coke 600 we had where we didn't have a single green flag pit stop the entire race. And so to me, the question that Gluck always asks every single race weekend is, it's not, was there good racing? There was absolutely good racing. Don't get me wrong. This was better than anything that the 550 package could have put together for the Coke 600. So I guess when you talk about recent memory, how many years do you want to go back before we get out of the 550 era and in before that? I guess that would, depending on what we're talking by recent memory here, that would change how I answer the question. So absolutely, the racing was very, very good. But why I didn't think it was such a good race is because of the attrition. It's because of the constant cautions. It felt like we could never really get a rhythm going. This is already the longest race of the year, and it was dragged out even longer. We continue to see tire issues. That's been an issue we've been talking about for weeks now. I think Goodyear really have some work to do. The next-gen car has obviously been very good everywhere aside from the short tracks, but Goodyear have to step up their game because there were more drivers last night that got caught out by tire issues through no fault of their own. So that's an issue for me. And then obviously the overtime period. We talked a little bit earlier on in the show. At the very least, the Indianapolis 500 still ended at the advertised distance of 500 miles. So when you talk about the Indy 500, the Coke 600, these are not arbitrary numbers here. These are numbers that are the advertised distance that represent how many miles there are in the race. And so to me, when you extend the 600-mile race that you advertise as 600 miles in your title, and it gets up to be whatever it was, almost 620 miles, there's some inconsistencies in that. I've given that speech on overtime before. I don't know if Josh is listening to me. I know he said he was looking forward to my speech. I don't want to get too far into that because we're already running long here. But it was frustrating to me to see so many cars get torn up, and then a marathon finish on a marathon night. There was just enough factors to me that weren't great that led me to vote no on that poll. But if you enjoyed the race, if you voted yes, I completely understand why. I was just surprised that it was as much of a landslide as it normally is. And real quick here, before we move on, I want people to understand, I'm not this, impossible to please person here that's a perfectionist. I understand that, people see me and they know that I have a lot of issues with the sport today and the direction that it's gone in recent years. There have been times where the poll's at 40 or 50% yes, and I've still voted yes, and I may be in a small minority there. So it's a matter of factoring everything in. And what we saw last night, to me, there was enough combination of things that if there was a third option like meh or average, I probably would have gone with that. But there was enough to me that I didn't like that I leaned no. But that's just my opinion. Certainly better than the 550, but still things that NASCAR can improve on.
And Ben, I really like how you were able to distinguish the fact between the race and the racing itself. I think that's a clear distinction that you really made there. And I will say, I said it on Twitter last night, for the first time in my lifetime of watching the Coca-Cola 600, I guess from an entertainment standpoint, since that's where we're headed nowadays in racing, it was the first time from the drop of the green flag to the checker flag that the Coca-Cola 600 held my attention every single lap, because for the most part I tend to tune out and do other things when it's happening, because typically you don't see a lot of action going on in a Coca-Cola 600 traditionally. So I felt that the racing, it was really cool being able to see the drivers use all the different lanes from the top, the middle and bottom. We saw a lot of great action there, but as you mentioned, all the issues with the tires, Goodyear really needs to figure that out, and then all of the cautions as well. And then on a really long night, as you said, Ben, we had added the additional on almost 20 miles there, and I'm sure everybody was ready to go to bed here in the East Coast. People, everybody at the track ready to go home. Just a really long night for NASCAR. And oh boy, is that next gen car quite a handful. Cars are harder to drive now. Maybe they made it a little too harder to drive, but hey, I'm sure all those drivers really like the challenge. I'm sure it would be less challenging for some if Goodyear was able to get on top of the issue with their new tires for this year. And the 10th caution was for a big multi-car wreck. Multiple drivers were involved when Ryan Blaney got in the apron and lost control. The caution before that, Chase Elliott got into a wall, spun, and had a damaged toe on the car. Bubba Wallace and Brad Keselowski were a part of the big wreck out of the race because of the damaged vehicle policy, or DVP. Wallace's team misunderstood the rule and cost their driver a potentially decent finish with all the attrition we saw. The DVP is a rule that you have 6 minutes to repair the car and meet minimum speed after a crash. You're out of the race if you fail to meet minimum speed or go over the 6 minutes on the clock. NASCAR introduced this particular rule to prevent heavily damaged cars from dropping parts on the track, causing unnecessary cautions, getting in the way, or potentially stop someone in a damaged, uncompetitive car from seeking revenge on the track against another driver. And this is really a debate that set Twitter on fire last night. And starting with you, Ben, I know you have a lot to say on this one. Should NASCAR revisit the damaged vehicle policy or remove it entirely?
Remove it entirely. I don't understand. I mean, there's a lot of rules that have been introduced that I may not be in favor of them, but I can at least understand what we're going for with an entertainment point of view, or why certain fans might prefer it. Stage racing requires drivers to run hard all race. Playoffs ensure a championship isn't a runaway. Overtime guarantees a green flag finish. I get all of that. I don't understand this rule at all. To me, it's just part of a laundry list. I replied to your tweet last night, Kobe. I said this is just one of many rules that have been introduced that I don't really get what NASCAR was going for here. But this rule in particular, it's completely counterintuitive. The goal of the DVP was to prevent drivers from making, or teams, I guess, from making repair jobs that left parts of their cars exposed and debris coming off of the cars, and uncompetitive cars just out there logging laps, trying to maybe gain 2 or 3 spots at most. But what the DVP has done is it's put them within a 6-minute time limit to make those changes from pit road. So now you have the same exact issues. You have guys using up 5.5 minutes of a clock, going back out on track, with a bent toe link or pieces and parts flying off the car. And then maybe one of them does come off the car. We've seen this at Daytona and Talladega before. And you have to throw the caution out again. And it's a completely counterintuitive rule because the DVP was supposed to prevent that. But you've given teams a time limit now. So now they have to use everything that they have in pit road, but not at the garage, to try to do a super quick repair job, get out and make minimum speed. And then if you make minimum speed, then you can take your car back to the garage and take as much time as you want because the clock expires. So you don't, or the clock goes away. I shouldn't say the clock doesn't expire, but you guys know what I mean. The DVP is absolutely unnecessary. It does more harm than good. It's not a good rule. Bubba Wallace is just the latest driver to get screwed by it. I'm not a fan of it at all. And I think he and his fans have every right to be questioning why they were forced to retire from the race yesterday, because he got some damage in that accident. So obviously he was going to go on the clock, but from a strategy standpoint, they didn't want to use their tires up. They didn't want to risk damaging the car any further. And that being cautious, being mindful of the fact that there was still a lot of racing left, ended up forcing them out of the race and ending their race. And I don't like that one bit.
I agree with everything you said, Ben. I think it should be removed entirely. If you viewers may remember back in the day, if you were watching NASCAR in the 80s and 90s, you saw teams that would come out with, like, you think they were racing a modified instead of a stock car. They had, there was no hood on the car, there was no front bumper, let the viewers know, I believe it was at a race with Mark Martin's, their team did some creative work to have a sod on their car. So, I think it should be removed entirely. I kind of miss seeing, a car, let them fix it, and give them as much time as possible, for each team so they can go back on the track. 6 minutes to me, no. It should be removed completely.
Just real quick, though, I love what you're saying, Adam, about Mark Martin's repair job. And I actually bought the Checkers or Wreckers Dale Jr. car that Lionel offered last year, where they did the same thing and they taped the number. I miss seeing that so much. And I think, it's kind of irrelevant now that you have a full season championship. But I even remember in 2012 in the IndyCar series, Will Power crashed out of that race and got back out on track to just log a couple of laps to go from 10 to 12 points because he was in the championship battle with Ryan Hunter-Reay. And in NASCAR, you would see that all the time, particularly back when we had a full season points format. And I miss those days. And I wish that there was something we could do to go back to those days. And I think the easiest thing is just get rid of a DVP. I guess you'd also have to get rid of playoffs as well for it to matter in the long term. But, let's take one baby step at a time here. I think the DVP is something that most fans are in agreement with. It's a flawed rule at best and counterintuitive rule at worst. So just get rid of it.
Yeah, it really feels like that the damaged vehicle policy does more harm than good, and I know it's very frustrating, especially when you're like Bubba Wallace and his team who misinterpreted what was supposed to be going on during that time. And with this policy, we've seen cars that was perfectly capable of continuing the race, probably still getting a decent finish, but because the clock expired, they didn't meet minimum speed because of poor timing and ill-advised caution. Then it ultimately ends the race because, as I mentioned last night, if Bubba Wallace did not run out of time on the DVP clock, he probably would have ended up finishing well. We saw a lot of cars up there with damage at the end, especially with all the attrition. It was in terms of attrition, it was really like a super speedway race with all of the cars that were out, all of the cars that had damage. It looked like they'd certainly been in battle at a bull ring or involved in a big wreck on a super speedway. And we have a question in the chat room from a Dan Alive said, "Do I think Ryan Blaney will lose his ride?" No, I don't think Ryan Blaney is going to lose his ride anytime soon. I'm sure a lot of people have expected a lot more from Ryan Blaney at this point, expecting him to win a few more races, run more consistently. But I think Ryan Blaney's best years in NASCAR are ahead of him, and I don't foresee him losing his ride at all at Team Penske anytime soon. And if Ryan Blaney ended up losing his ride at Team Penske in the future, I'm sure that there'll certainly be a lot more team owners in the Cup garage who will be interested in his services. And now taking a look at the grid ranking, week 9, we saw Max Verstappen put more distance between himself and Charles Leclerc. MotoGP riders Fabio Quartararo and Aleix Spargo moved into the top 10. Will Power is the only IndyCar driver left in the top 10 as Alex Palou has fallen to 12th. And next week, we have Formula E, IndyCar, MotoGP, NASCAR, and World Rally Championship. Colin Rovan Perez going for his 4th win this season. He's closing in on Shane Van Gisbergen. In MotoGP, Enea Bastianini has 3 wins but lacks consistency of Fabio Quartararo. In Formula E and NASCAR, no driver has 3 wins yet. Several drivers with 2. So looking at racers such as Pecco Bagnaia, Stoffel Van Dorn, Ross Chastain, or Denny Hamlin, which one is more likely to get in the victory lane next weekend?
Well, I'm going to go off the board, and I'm going to say that Colin Rovan wins next time out for the World Rally Championship. He's won, I believe it's three races in a row now, so he's hard to beat in that series. And another driver I would have to look out for, I think it had to be Stoffel Van Dorn. Formula E goes to Jakarta in Indonesia, so it's going to be interesting to see how he does. I think it's new. I think it's a new track for Formula E, so I would have to say Kylie Rovanpera and then Stoffel Van Dorn.
We're going to Gateway, so it's kind of hard to predict a winner because this is a new track for the Cup Series. But I've got to say Ross Chastain's Truck Series win there a few years ago sticks out in my mind. Maybe that'll give him some momentum and some positive vibes as he heads into this race weekend. So I'll go with Ross Chastain. Obviously, the Trackhouse team has been firing on all cylinders all year. They looked very strong even last night with both of their cars. So maybe he'll be the one to get it done.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ben. If I had to pick, I certainly think Ross Chastain a Gateway potentially been a potential pick to get it done out there in the St. Louis area. And as you mentioned, that truck series win, maybe we'll see some nostalgia, and the win for Ross Chastain will be still imperfect. And I know that was quite a call by Vince Welch there that a lot of people still talk about today in Ross Chastain Trackhouse. That's really a team that can get the job done week in and week out. Justin Marks has really built quite an organization there, and I really do believe Ross Chastain has to be in contention. Well, in the conversation for being a serious championship contender that can go all the way down to the championship 4 in Phoenix and take home his very first NASCAR Cup Series title. I know his teammate Daniel Suarez ran extremely well last night at Charlotte. I actually think Suarez more than likely had one of the best cars there and could have possibly had a shot at winning if it wasn't for the wreck that took him out. It seems like Suarez has some very, very bad luck going on. So once Daniel Suarez is able to get that out of the way, I'm sure Daniel will eventually find victory lane at some point. Not sure when that's going to be, but right now, Ross Chastain's definitely carrying the flag for Trackhouse.
And with that all being said, it's now time for our Grid 1 shining moment from this huge weekend of motorsports from across the world. So I'll start with you, Kobe. What's your Grid 1 shining moment from this Memorial Day weekend of motorsports action?
Well, Adam, my one shining moment certainly has to be the entire weekend of racing. It was really great to see the Monaco Grand Prix back on this traditional weekend now. And I know we always talk about having breakfast in Monaco, lunch in Indy, and dinner in Charlotte. It felt kind of odd only having lunch in Indy and dinner in Charlotte and skipping the breakfast part. So it was really pleasing to have Monaco back on this particular weekend, and I believe there were some great storylines coming out of all three events. Yeah, starting with Monaco, Sergio Perez several years ago, people wouldn't even predicted that he would even have one Formula One win. We all remember his infamous win at Bahrain when he had the big celebration there with the formerly known Racing Point team, and now Sergio Perez is in race winning equipment, and he's really performing extremely well right now, performing the best that he's ever had in the history of Red Bull. The second driver has typically not delivered, especially alongside Max Verstappen. And nice to see that Sergio Perez is really the first teammate who's he's actually the closest to Max Verstappen in terms of performance. And I believe it might have been Ben earlier in the show who said who said he didn't know if Perez could be able to match Max throughout the rest of the season to stay up there with him in the championship. But right now, Checo's right in the thick of it in the Formula One championship, and who knows what could happen as the season goes on. Then the Indy 500 is always a special event. Marcus Ericsson, often the forgotten driver at Chip Ganassi Racing, got the granddaddy of them all. He's going to have his face on the Borg Warner Trophy, and it doesn't matter what Marcus Ericsson does in his racing career moving forward. He'll now be addressed forever as Marcus Ericsson, Indianapolis 500 champion. Also gives him validation that he is a really solid race car driver. And as I mentioned earlier in the show, that for Formula One, he wasn't able to show what he could do there, and he's showing it now in the NTT. In the IndyCar Series, and then quadricatic race at Charlotte, Coca-Cola 600, the on-track product itself, all the with the racing, all the different grooves. I thought the Coke 600 put on a good show in that aspect. So the entire motorsports racing weekend from Monaco to Indy to Charlotte, that's my Grid 1 shining moment.
Well, like I said earlier in the show, not even Chip Ganassi could beat Chip Ganassi this month at the Indianapolis 500. So I'm going to give my one shining moment, not just to Marcus Ericsson, but to that entire team. It was great to see Jimmy Johnson be so fast and run so well in qualifying for the 500. I know he got caught out a little bit in the race and then ultimately crashed out, but he did even lead a couple laps on the pit cycle. So, that's cool for him to be able to say. And still, I think a very good month for him, a very educational month for him. So I hope he comes back next year and has a little bit of experience under his belt. Totally agree with the day in the life. It was a great Indy 500 again, even with the red flag there at the end. I think everything ended up happening all right. And, getting back to Ganassi here, even with Scott Dixon's mistake, even with Alex Palou getting shuffled back and having to work his way through the front, Ganassi still had two bullets right up there fighting for the win at the end with Marcus Ericsson and Tony Kanaan. So a great month of May for the entire Ganassi team. They totally deserve to win the 500. Marcus Ericsson totally deserved to be the winning driver. And hopefully this will be the start of good things to come for the 8 team. And like I said, Marcus Ericsson may well be a championship contender, even if he can keep this up.
And for me, my Grid 1 shining moment has to be the entire Indy 500. I mentioned earlier in the show, for the first time in 2 years, there were no restrictions. So that means all the stands were packed. The infield was packed. And to see fans from across the country and around the world there was truly incredible. Awesome. Exciting. To see fans lined up at Gate 1 at 6 a.m. to get into their seat and to watch the Indy 500 was amazing. And everything that happened there for the Indy 500, I completely agree what I did in life said. Indy 500 easily my Grid 1 shining moment as well. And Michael Tiller said, just to be sure, since I had an internet issue, his one shining moment was Checo's maiden victory in Monaco. Yeah, I would say that's also pretty cool to see as well. But for me, like A Day in the Life said, the Indy 500. Enough said.
Yeah, enough said. And with that said, we're out of time for tonight. So we want to remind everybody, please be sure to like and subscribe to Grid Network here on YouTube. You can follow us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. And we definitely want to encourage you, take 5 minutes after our show and consider joining our Patreon, invest in the Grid Network to keep us on the air well into the future. Shout out to our Patreon supporters, Colin, Michelle, Mark, and Robin. Really appreciate everything you do here for us here at Grid Network. Click the link to buy me a coffee in the video description below, and you can buy a drink for your favorite on-air talent here at the Grid Network. We appreciate Edward Hunter from Formerly Zone, Amber and Zachary for buying us one. We certainly greatly appreciate it. And any amount will help us continue growing our motorsports media outlet here at Grid Network. And also visit public.com, also known as the stock market social media home. The link below and referral code gives you $5 to invest immediately. Public.com allows you to connect with your friends. You can make new friends and use tools to learn how to properly invest in the stock market. And on to tonight's agenda, be sure to catch Grid Live Encore with Brandon Crossan and Ben to recap ARCO, Trucks, and Xfinity at Charlotte and Formula 2 at Monaco. So be sure you don't miss that. Then Wednesday night, Adam and I return for a new episode of Grid Tonight. Really looking forward to seeing what's going to be in the news later this week. For Ben Snyder, Joseph Abniego, Adam Limmers, and Joshua Birch, I'm Kobe Lambert from the Podium Finish. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Don't be an anonymous investor. Join the stock market social media platform, public.com. Invest any amount of money and share with friends and new friends. Discover new opportunities, such as new companies and potential business partners, and useful tools for beginners, and share your experience with friends on public.com. Link in the video description gets you $5 for being a Grid Network viewer. Use the referral code GridNet for your free $5 to invest and start investing and networking on public.com.